Madeline Hayes wasn't supposed to be at Blackwater Lake that morning. Her shift at the diner had been cancelled again, and the $23 in her checking account wouldn't stretch until Friday. The bitter Minnesota winter had swallowed the landscape, turning the world into shades of white and gray, much like her prospects. She pulled her threadbare coat tighter, the wind biting through worn seams as she crossed the empty park. That's when she heard it, a sound like a gunshot, followed by a cry that shattered the morning silence. Through the veil of fog rising from the lake's surface, she saw him. A man thrashing in dark water where ice had given way. No one else was around. Just Madeline, who couldn't afford to replace her phone, let alone her clothes if they got ruined. Just Madeline, who had never saved anything in her life. But some choices make themselves before you even know you're choosing. Madeline's feet moved before her mind could process what was happening. She threw her backpack onto the snow and sprinted toward the broken edge of ice, her breath forming desperate clouds in the frigid air. The man's face disappeared beneath the surface, then bobbed up again, his arms flailing against the jagged ice that crumbled with each attempt to pull himself out. "Hold on," she screamed, her voice thin against the vastness of the empty park. "I'm coming." 20 feet from shore, the ice turned from opaque white to translucent blue. Dangerous. She dropped to her stomach and spread her arms wide, distributing her weight as she inched forward on her elbows. The cold burned through her jeans, her coat, seeping into her bones, but she kept moving. Each foot forward brought a symphony of creaks and groans from beneath her. "Stay there." The man's voice was strained, his expensive-looking wool coat now a sodden anchor. "The ice won't hold us both." Madeline ignored him. 10 feet away now. She could see his face clearly, handsome despite being contorted with pain and cold, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes met hers, steel blue and filled with something beyond fear. Recognition, maybe, though not of her. Of death. "I'm not leaving you," she called. "Kick your feet. Try to get horizontal." The ice moaned beneath her. A spider web of cracks spread outward from where she lay. 7 feet separated them now. The man's movements were slowing, his lips taking on a bluish tint. Hypothermia working quickly in the sub-zero water. She unraveled her scarf, the only decent winter accessory she owned, a gift from her late mother, and extended it toward him. "Grab this." His first attempt fell short, fingers too numb to close around the fabric. Madeline stretched further, the ice shifting beneath her with an ominous crack. She was either going to save the stranger or join him in the darkness below. "Please," she whispered, though whether to him or God, she wasn't sure. Their eyes locked once more. Something passed between them, a silent agreement to fight together. He summoned what must have been his last reserves of strength and lunged for the scarf. This time, his fingers closed around it. "Hold tight," Madeline commanded, her voice steadier than the thundering of her heart. She began to inch backward, pulling with measured force. The man kicked his feet, trying to propel himself forward. The ice at the edge continued to break beneath his weight, but Madeline kept pulling, her shoulders screaming, her gloved hands burning with friction against the wool scarf. An eternity compressed into minutes. Inch by agonizing inch, she pulled him toward more solid ice. When his torso finally cleared the water, the broken shelf beneath him held. Madeline kept pulling until they were both a safe distance from the jagged hole. They lay there panting, their breath mingling in the cold air. Up close, she noticed details: the fine cut of his now ruined coat, the expensive watch still circling his wrist, the manicured nails now blue with cold. "We need to get you warm," she said, practicality overtaking adrenaline. Can you stand? He nodded weakly. Madeline helped him to his feet, allowing him to lean heavily against her much smaller frame. His height and build dwarfed her, but she was stronger than she looked. Years of stocking shelves and scrubbing floors had built muscle beneath her slight frame. My car, he managed through chattering teeth, gesturing vaguely toward the parking lot. Black Range Rover. Of course, Madeline thought. She guided him carefully across the snow-covered ground, supporting his weight when his legs threatened to buckle. The parking lot held only two vehicles: her ancient Honda with the mismatched door, and a gleaming black SUV that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 years. Keys? She asked. With trembling hands, he pulled a key fob from his pocket. The luxury vehicle chirped to life. Madeline helped him into the passenger seat, cranking the heat to maximum once she slid behind the wheel. Hospital, she said firmly. You need medical attention. No. His voice was stronger now, commanding even through the shivers. No hospitals. No police. No reports. Madeline stared at him incredulously. You almost died back there. You need just warmth. And dry clothes. His eyes met hers, pleading but also authoritative. Please. I have my reasons. She should insist. Any reasonable person would. But something in his expression, desperation beneath the veneer of control, resonated with her. She understood wanting to avoid officials, having spent much of her own life flying beneath the radar of systems that seemed designed to humiliate rather than help. You have dry clothes somewhere? She asked. He nodded, fumbling with his waterlogged phone. My place. 20 minutes from here. Madeline put the vehicle in drive, navigating carefully out of the park. Her own soaked clothes clung uncomfortably to her skin, but the luxury SUV's heated seats were already working their magic. She glanced at her passenger, who was watching her with an intensity that made her shift in her seat. Thank you, he said simply. You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same, she replied automatically. The corner of his mouth quirked up slightly. We both know that's not true. The GPS on his phone directed her toward Lakeshore Drive, the wealthiest area in town. Of course. As the opulent homes came into view, Madeline felt increasingly out of place, acutely aware of her thrift store clothes and the dirt beneath her fingernails from the morning's gardening work. Just who are you? She finally asked. He studied her for a long moment before answering. Someone who wasn't supposed to be at that lake either. Someone who, until about 20 minutes ago, thought he had nothing left to lose. The house stood separate from its neighbors, sheltered by ancient oaks and a privacy wall that screamed old money. Madeline's hands tightened on the steering wheel as she pulled into the curved driveway. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here, in this world of privilege where people owned homes larger than the entire apartment building where she rented a studio. Security code is 7214, he said, his voice steadier now though his body still trembled with cold. Inside, the home was both exactly what she expected and somehow not. The grandeur was there: soaring ceilings, marble floors, artwork that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. But the space felt unlived in, more like a museum than a home. No photographs. No clutter of daily living. Just perfect, soulless elegance. Bathrooms upstairs, he directed. First door on the left. You'll find towels and a robe. I'll use the master suite. Madeline hesitated, suddenly aware of how vulnerable her position was. Alone in a stranger's mansion, no one knowing her whereabouts. He seemed to read her thoughts. I promise you're safe here. After what you did today, harming you would make me the vilest creature on earth. He held out his hand. Nathan. Nathan Caldwell. The name registered dimly in her mind as she shook his hand. Madeline Hayes. Only after she'd showered and wrapped herself in a plush robe that probably cost more than her monthly rent did the name fully click. Nathan Caldwell. Tech mogul. Philanthropist. The 35-year-old founder of Caldwell Innovations, whose net worth was reportedly in the billions. His face occasionally graced business magazines which she glimpsed while stocking the magazine rack at Morton's convenience store, her weekend job. When she descended the stairs, he was waiting in the living room, also changed, a fire now burning in the massive stone fireplace. He'd prepared 2 mugs of something steaming. Hot chocolate, he explained, offering her one. With a splash of brandy. For medicinal purposes. Madeline accepted the mug, curling her fingers around its warmth. You're Nathan Caldwell. Yes. His expression remained neutral, watching for her reaction. The Nathan Caldwell who disappeared from public view 3 months ago after the congressional hearing on data privacy. Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, that she knew this detail. The same. And you just happened to be walking across a frozen lake in the middle of nowhere. I didn't plan to go through the ice, if that's what you're asking. The hint of a smile played at his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. He gestured toward a plush sofa. Please, sit. Your clothes are in the dryer. Madeline perched on the edge of the cushion, feeling as out of place as a sparrow in a gold cage. The hot chocolate was rich and complex on her tongue, nothing like the watery powder packets she occasionally splurged on. Why don't you want anyone to know you almost drowned? She asked directly. Nathan studied the flames before answering. Because I've spent these past months carefully constructing a new life. One where I'm not constantly watched, analyzed, or approached for money or favors. He looked at her. Until today, no one in this town knew who I was. I won't tell anyone, Madeline said automatically. I believe you. His gaze was too perceptive, too searching. But I am curious, why were you out there? The weather service issued warnings to stay off the ice. Madeline's fingers tightened around the mug. I was taking a shortcut. My shift at the diner got cancelled, and I was heading to my other job at the library. Multiple jobs, he noted. Student. A bitter laugh escaped before she could stop it. Not anymore. Had to drop out from state when my mom got sick. Medical bills piled up. She died anyway. The words came out more harshly than intended, the unfairness of it still raw after 2 years. Something changed in Nathan's expression, recognition of a different sort. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't cause the cancer or create the healthcare system. She took another sip of hot chocolate, the brandy warming her from within. Anyway, that's why I was crossing the lake. It cuts 15 minutes off the walk to the library. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed, startling Madeline. What time is it? Just past noon. I need to go. She set down the mug. My shift starts at 1. I'll drive you. That's not NEC. Please. His voice softened. It's the least I can do after you saved my life. The dryer buzzed, announcing her clothes were ready. While Nathan retrieved them, Madeline took in more details of the home. Despite its elegant furnishings, it lacked the personal touches that made a house a home. No family photos. No mementos. Just carefully curated art and furniture that could have been assembled from a high-end catalog. When she emerged from the bathroom, once again clad in her worn jeans and faded sweater, Nathan was waiting with a thick wool coat. "Your coat is still damp," he explained, holding it out. "Take this one." Madeline shook her head. "I can't accept that. It's a coat, not a car," he said with a hint of impatience. "Besides, it's my fault yours got soaked." "How do you figure that?" "If I hadn't been stupid enough to walk on thin ice, you wouldn't have had to rescue me." The logic was flawed, but his expression brooked no argument. Reluctantly, she accepted the coat, softer than anything she'd ever worn, its weight substantial against the winter cold. As they drove toward the library, silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken questions. The town looked different from inside the luxury vehicle, as though she were seeing it through a filter of privilege. "This is fine," she said as they approached the library's side entrance. "I don't want to explain why I'm arriving in a Range Rover." Nathan pulled over. "Madeline," he hesitated, seeming to search for words. "What you did today. I don't know how to properly thank you." "You don't have to." "Really?" She reached for the door handle. "At least let me have your number. In case." "In case what?" she asked, genuinely curious. He smiled, a real smile this time, transforming his face from merely handsome to something that made her heart skip. "In case I need rescuing again." 3 days passed with no word from Nathan Caldwell. Madeline told herself it was better this way. Their worlds had collided briefly, a cosmic accident, before spinning back into their proper orbits. She kept his coat, though, hanging it carefully in her tiny closet, its luxury incongruous among her thrift store finds. On Thursday, Morton's convenience store was unusually busy for a weekday afternoon. Madeline restocked the cooler, her back aching from the morning shift at the diner. The bell above the door chimed, but she didn't look up until she heard the whispers. "That's him," someone hissed. "The tech billionaire." Madeline froze, a six-pack of beer suspended in her hands. Through the cooler's glass door, she saw Nathan's reflection as he scanned the store. He wore casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, but even without the trappings of wealth, he radiated a confidence that made him stand out in the small-town setting. Their eyes met in the reflection. Nathan's face brightened with recognition, and he moved toward her just as Mr. Morton himself emerged from the back room. "Mr. Caldwell." The store owner's voice carried the reverent tone reserved for customers who might single-handedly improve quarterly earnings. "What an honor. How can we help you today?" "I'm actually here to see Madeline," Nathan replied, his eyes never leaving hers. She turned slowly, heat rising to her cheeks as curious gazes from customers and co-workers swiveled in her direction. Mr. Morton's expression shifted from obsequious to bewildered as he looked between them. "Miss Hayes. You know Mr. Caldwell?" Nathan saved her from answering. "Madeline and I are acquainted, yes. I was hoping to speak with her. Perhaps she could take her break now." It wasn't really a question. Minutes later, Madeline found herself sitting opposite Nathan in the small cafe next door, conscious of her uniform shirt with the Mortons logo and the curious stares from other patrons. "You're causing a scene," she said quietly, shredding a paper napkin. "This is a small town. People talk." "I'm aware." Nathan seemed unbothered. "I would have called, but you never gave me your number. So you tracked me down at work?" How did you even know I work at Morton's? You mentioned multiple jobs. The library, the diner, and your words whatever else pays the bills. It wasn't hard to find you. That's not creepy at all, she muttered. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. I apologize if I overstepped. I wanted to thank you properly. You already thanked me. Words seem inadequate for saving someone's life. The waitress approached, her eyes wide as she recognized Nathan. She fumbled through taking their order, just coffee for both of them, before hurrying away to spread the news. Why are you really here? Madeline asked once they were alone again. The truth. Nathan's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the table. I haven't been able to stop thinking about what happened. About you. His eyes met hers. Do you know what I was doing on that lake? She shook her head. I was testing myself. Seeing if I still felt fear. His voice dropped. These past months, I've felt nothing. Numb. Disconnected from everything. But when the ice broke, he stopped abruptly. I'm not explaining this well. You were looking for something to make you feel alive, Madeline supplied. Even if it might kill you. Surprise flickered across his face. Yes. Exactly. I get it. More than you might think. Nathan leaned forward. When you pulled me from that water, it was like waking up. For the first time in months, everything was sharp and clear and real. His intensity was almost physical. I need to understand why. Madeline shifted uncomfortably. I'm not some magical life coach, Nathan. I just happened to be there. It wasn't just that you saved me. It was the way you live. Unguarded. Authentic. A bitter laugh escaped her. You mean poor? Because believe me, authenticity is a lot easier to come by when you can't afford pretense. That's not what I mean. Isn't it? You've spent, what, 20 minutes total with me? Yet somehow I've become the symbol of authentic living. She shook her head. You don't know me. You don't know what it's like to count pennies, to choose between electricity and dinner, to wear shoes with holes because new ones aren't in the budget. Nathan sat back, his expression careful. You're right. I don't know those things. But I know what it's like to lose yourself. To wake up one day and realize you've become a collection of assets and liabilities instead of a person. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, the disparity in their circumstances fell away, leaving only two people trying to navigate the wreckage of different disasters. I should get back to work, she said finally. My break's almost over. Nathan nodded, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a small envelope. Before you go, this is yours. What is it? Open it later. He stood, leaving money for the coffee. And Madeline? I understand if you want nothing to do with me after this. But if you change your mind. He placed a business card beside the envelope. My personal number. Back at Morton's, Madeline slipped into the employee bathroom before returning to her shift. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. The shock of it made her knees weak. This amount would cover her remaining debts, provide a security deposit on a better apartment, maybe even allow her to return to college. It was life-changing. It was also impossible to accept. That evening, after finishing her shift at the library, Madeline walked to the address printed on Nathan's business card. It wasn't his home but an office building downtown Lakeview Properties, according to the sign. The security guard recognized her name immediately. Miss Hayes. Mr. Caldwell said you might stop by. 15th floor. The elevator ride gave her time to rehearse her speech, to remember all the reasons why she couldn't accept his money. When the doors opened directly into a minimalist office suite, Nathan was waiting, as though he'd known she would come. "You can't buy me," she said without preamble, holding out the uncashed check. "That wasn't my intention." "Then what was it?" "Guilt. Obligation. Tax write-off. Gratitude," he said simply. "And perhaps opportunity. You mentioned medical bills, dropping out of college. I don't want your charity. It's not charity to recognize value." "What value?" "That I'm some sort of inspiration to you. The noble poor person who reminded the rich man what really matters." Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "I'm not a character in your redemption story, Nathan. I'm a real person with real problems that won't be solved by your guilty conscience." Nathan's expression remained steady, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. Then what would solve them? The question caught her off guard. What? If not money, what would actually help? "What do you need?" Madeline faltered. No one had asked her that in years. I need stability. A reliable job that pays a living wage. Healthcare that doesn't bankrupt me when I get sick. The chance to finish my degree without working myself to exhaustion." Nathan nodded slowly. "Those are reasonable things to want. But not things you can give me," she pointed out, "without it being charity. What if there was another way?" He gestured toward the chairs by the window. "Please, sit. Hear me out." The following week passed in a blur for Madeline. She continued her regular shifts at all three jobs, but her mind constantly returned to Nathan's proposal, a legitimate position with Caldwell Innovations' new community outreach division, based in their small town. The job came with benefits, tuition assistance, and a salary that made her breath catch, all contingent on her finishing her degree. "It's not charity," he'd insisted. "It's investment. You have insight into challenges that people in my circles can't begin to comprehend. That perspective is valuable." Still, doubt gnawed at her. Was this just an elaborate way for Nathan to ease his conscience? Would she become the token regular person in his organization, trotted out to prove his commitment to diversity of thought? On Friday evening, as she locked up the library, she found Nathan waiting by her car, snowflakes dusting his dark hair. "You never called," he said simply. "I've been thinking. And overthinking, I'd wager." His smile was gentle. "Walk with me." They strolled through the town square, Christmas lights twinkling against the early darkness. Nathan bought them both hot chocolate from a street vendor, the paper cups warming their gloved hands. "When I was 12, he began suddenly, my father lost everything. Bad investments, worse friends. We went from mansion to motel room in a matter of weeks." Madeline glanced at him, surprised. This detail hadn't appeared in any of the articles she'd looked up about him. "For 8 months, we lived on the edge of disaster. I watched my mother count change for laundry, my father worked 2 minimum wage jobs." His expression grew distant. "Then my father's old college roommate offered him a job. A real one, with benefits. Some people called it charity. My father called it a lifeline. What happened? He worked harder than anyone else. proved his worth 10 times over. Eventually built back enough to start his own company. Nathan looked at her. He never forgot what it was like, though. To be invisible. Disposable. They stopped by the frozen fountain in the center of the square. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand I'm not offering you a handout. I'm offering an opportunity, the same kind someone once offered my father." Madeline was silent for a long moment. "And if I fail?" "Then you fail forward, having tried." He turned to face her. "But I don't think you will. I've seen your transcripts." "You what?" Indignation flared within her. "Background check for the position," he said unapologetically. 3.8 GPA while working full-time and caring for an ill parent. Most people would have broken under half that pressure. Madeline wanted to be angry at the invasion of privacy, but exhaustion won out. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Nathan was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Before the ice broke beneath me, I was already drowning. In expectations, in isolation, in the particular emptiness that comes from having everything and feeling nothing." His eyes met hers. "You didn't just pull me from that lake, Madeline. You showed me there's another way to live. With purpose. With integrity. Especially when circumstances are brutal. I'm not some inspiration story. No, you're better. You're real." He stepped closer. "Take the job or don't. But know this meeting you has already changed me, and that's not something I can undo." The sincerity in his voice resonated with something deep within her. For years, Madeline had been surviving head down, shoulders braced against whatever came next. The prospect of something more, of thriving, was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I need time," she said finally. "You have it. The position stays open until you decide." As they parted ways at her car, Nathan hesitated. "There's a fundraiser tomorrow night for the library. As chairman of the board, I'm expected to attend. Would you consider being my guest?" Madeline laughed despite herself. "I'm working it, Nathan. Serving drinks and cleaning up after." "Not anymore. I spoke with the director. She's rather eager to accommodate the library's largest donor." "You can't just." "I already did." His expression was somewhere between sheepish and unapologetic. "Is that a yes?" She should refuse on principle. But curiosity and something else she wasn't ready to name won out. "What does one wear to a library fundraiser?" His smile was answer enough. The following evening, Madeline stood before the mirror in her tiny apartment, hardly recognizing herself. The dress delivered that afternoon was simple but elegant, its deep blue fabric flattering without being overstated. Her hair, usually pulled back for practicality, fell in waves around her shoulders. A knock at the door announced Nathan's arrival. When she opened it, the appreciation in his eyes sent warmth flooding through her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "The dress helps." "No, it's definitely you." The fundraiser was held in the library's main reading room, transformed for the evening with twinkling lights and elegant floral arrangements. As they entered, Madeline felt the weight of curious stares. She recognized many attendees, the town's elite, people who usually only saw her across a counter or serving their needs. "Ignore them," Nathan murmured, his hand warm at the small of her back. "They'll adjust." Throughout the evening, Madeline watched Nathan navigate the social currents with practiced ease while still keeping her at the center of his attention. He introduced her not as someone he'd rescued or someone who had rescued him, but as Madeline Hayes, who has remarkable insights on community needs and educational access. Later, as they slow danced to the string quartet, Madeline finally asked the question that had been circling her mind all evening. Why me, Nathan? Of all the people you could connect with, why me? His hand tightened slightly around hers. Because you're the first person in years who really saw me without seeing what I could do for them. His eyes held hers. Do you know how rare that is? I didn't know who you were when I pulled you from that lake. Exactly. The simplicity of his answer resonated between them. And even after you knew, you handed back $50,000 because you valued your integrity more than comfort. Some would call that stupidity. I call it extraordinary. He drew her slightly closer. Madeline, I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's friendship or something more. But I know it's real, and real is what I've been missing. As they swayed to the music, surrounded by luxury that would have been unimaginable to her just weeks ago, Madeline felt something shifting inside her. Not just the undeniable attraction to Nathan, but a deeper recognition, perhaps they had both been drowning in different ways before fate brought them together on a frozen lake. Later that night, as they stood at her apartment door, the contrast between her world and his couldn't have been more stark. The hallway's fluorescent lights flickered, revealing peeling paint and worn carpet. I should be embarrassed, she said softly, gesturing to her surroundings. But this place kept me from homelessness when things were worst. I can't be ashamed of it. Nathan's expression was thoughtful. You know what I see when I look at this place? What? Resilience. Determination. A woman who refused to be defeated by circumstances that would crush most people. His words unlocked something within her, a wall she'd built against hope, against possibility, against the particular vulnerability of being seen. Without thinking, she rose on tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, but quickly deepened with shared hunger. Nathan's arms encircled her, pulling her closer, and for one perfect moment, the distance between their worlds disappeared completely. When they finally separated, both breathless, Madeline knew she stood at a crossroads. The path backward led to safety, to the familiar struggle that had defined her existence. The path forward was uncertain, filled with both promise and risk. I'll take the job, she whispered against his lips. His smile was like sunrise breaking over the frozen lake, warm, illuminating, full of promise. You won't regret it? I might, she countered, her practical nature reasserting itself. It's complicated. Life is complicated, Nathan replied. But some complications are worth it. As they stood together in the dingy hallway, Madeline realized that perhaps the greatest risk wasn't in accepting Nathan's offer, but in continuing to live half a life, too afraid to reach for more. She had pulled him from literal thin ice, perhaps he was pulling her from the metaphorical kind of fragile, precarious existence she'd been balancing on for too long. We'll figure it out, she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. One day at a time. Nathan's answering kiss tasted like promise, like possibility, like a future neither of them could have imagined before a frozen lake brought their worlds together. Life rarely delivers its most profound lessons in comfortable packages. Sometimes they come wrapped in crisis, in heartbreak, in moments that push us to the very edge of ourselves. For Madeline and Nathan, it took the shattering of ice, both literal and figurative, to reveal truths that had been submerged beneath the surface of their lives. We often believe that the divide between different worlds, privilege and poverty, abundance and scarcity, is unbridgeable. But human connection has always been more powerful than circumstance. When we truly see each other, not as categories or stereotypes but as fellow travelers with our own wounds and wisdom, something remarkable happens. We recognize that resilience and emptiness, struggle and stagnation, can exist at every level of society. The greatest wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in authenticity, the courage to live truthfully, to extend a hand when it might cost us, to accept help when pride would have us drown instead. And perhaps the most important journey isn't the one that takes us from poverty to prosperity, but from isolation to connection. Madeline saved Nathan from freezing waters, but he helped her realize that surviving isn't enough, that she deserved to thrive, to dream again. In each other, they found not just romance, but recognition, the profound gift of being truly seen. Some opportunities come disguised as disasters. Some rescues work both ways. This story touches on struggles many of us face: the feeling of drowning beneath financial pressure, the emptiness that can come even amid abundance, the fear of reaching for something better. Which part resonated most deeply with you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you've been Madeline, working multiple jobs just to stay afloat, wondering if anyone sees your struggle. Or perhaps you've been Nathan, surrounded by success yet feeling strangely hollow, disconnected from what matters most. Have you ever experienced a frozen lake moment, a crisis that ultimately led to transformation? Or met someone who changed your life's trajectory through an unexpected connection? Share your story below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this narrative moved you, please consider subscribing for more stories that explore the complexity of human connection across different worlds. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next upload, where we'll explore another tale of unexpected transformation. Remember, sometimes our greatest breakthroughs happen when the ice beneath us breaks. Sometimes we must fall through to finally rise.